Hello, everyone. This is Terry Randolph at OmniTrax, and welcome to today's webinar, KPIs for Measuring Your Drivers and Fleet. Before we begin, there are a few items I would like to review. Today's session is being recorded, and a link will be provided within the next few days. We will have time for questions following the presentation. Please type any questions you have within the Q&A box found on your screen. You can do this throughout. You do not have to wait until the Q&A portion of the webinar. Also, for additional information, please note the resource box found in the right-hand corner of your screen. There you can find further details on OmniTrax Roadnet Insights and a white paper on the 6 tips for implementing analytics. At this time, I'd like to welcome today's presenter, Cindy Brandt. Cindy is the Senior Director of Strategic Alliances, Product Marketing, and she has been with OmniTrax Roadnet for 17 years. We are fortunate to have her share this session with us today. Cindy?
Well, thank you very much, Terry. I'm excited to be here today to talk about something that's kind of near and dear to me, KPIs. But you can't talk just about KPIs without talking a little bit about how to easily manage your fleet. So KPIs start actually with having a great route plan. So we'll spend just a couple of minutes on that. Then we'll talk a little bit about execution. That's the second critical part in collecting and using KPIs in your business. Third, understanding a little bit about why you need to take those two key elements and plot and plan them against each other. And then third, the golden key, business intelligence tools. And that's really where showing you those KPIs and bringing those KPIs to life are really important. But before we dive in, let's go ahead and start quickly with a poll question. So when you route your vehicles today, of these choices, what are your top goals when you route? Is it to meet your time windows? Is it to create routes that are the lowest cost possible? Is it to reduce the total distance, the miles or kilometers that you're traveling? Or is it maybe to reduce your overtime? So if you just go ahead and click one or more of those so I can tabulate those votes quickly. What we're trying to do is just really understand our audience a little bit more. All right, so it looks like today the top two winners are really about containing costs and reducing your miles or kilometers that you're traveling through the day. Reducing overtime and meeting time windows is a nice close second there. But this is really interesting to look at because KPIs are the one thing that can help you reduce your costs, but also a big part of those costs are about reducing kilometers. So like I said, let's start a little bit about understanding routing. A great plan every day creates opportunity for you. And a great plan is going to do three things for you. Reduce various costs, maximize certain functions, and then, of course, third, let you work smarter. So when we talk about reductions, first and foremost, we're talking about miles driven, fuel costs, and then driver overtime. Those are the three major contributors to cost, especially cost in a route. When we create routes just by shuffling invoices around or by letting Joe the router who has all this tribal knowledge in his head, believe it or not, these routes come out pretty inefficient. When we can reduce those things, we can also look at the maximization. So we really want to maximize driver productivity. If a driver's got 5 stops and they get paid for 8 hours and those 5 stops only take 6 hours, you can bet they're coming back in 8 hours. We want to make sure that drivers are held accountable for the time that they should be on the road. The second one here is really about equipment productivity. It's not uncommon for us to see customers that have vehicle utilization rates that are, 65% or less. What if it was close to 85 or 90% so you could put 1 or 2 stops more on that route every single day? And then, of course, customer service expectations. This is a real moving target these days. If you think about our consumer lives and how much information we get when we buy something, we're starting to see that same need now transcend into distribution. Plus, a lot of times, the one thing that really differentiates all these different food service, beverage, produce, whatever type of company you might be, is about the customer service, the flexibility in ordering and the information you can provide when you're delivering. Our third opportunity is about working smarter. What if you could reduce your overall routing time by 50%? I bet you could deploy that employee someplace else that's more in a revenue-generating activity. And then also about these daily transportation problems. I mean, I'm sure that in every one of your businesses, every day, every driver shows up and trucks never break down, and you live in kind of the world of perfect delivery. But, we know that that's not true. We know that every day drivers call in sick, every day trucks break down, and every day there's traffic jams, accidents that really create transportation challenges for us. But with a great plan and really understanding why routing is important, it's important for a couple of reasons. One, you hit a critical mass of order volume and routing simply becomes difficult. The human mind can only manage 13 tasks at once. Early delivery time expectations. I'm sure you don't have any salespeople that absolutely promise everybody to be the first stop on the route. We know that happens all the time, and what it does is it just makes your routes incredibly inefficient. Customer service. It's really hard to provide exceptional customer service and meet every single customer's need and also manage costs. Sometimes the greater level of flexibility in your routes and the greater level of customer service that you're providing, whether it's meeting everybody's time window, meeting very tight time windows, what that does is it actually increases the cost of your routes. Of course, we have a lot of variable costs out there, too, that we want to try to normalize. Fuel. In North America, fuel has graciously dipped quite a bit over the last couple of years, but we anticipate it's going to go up again. How do we normalize and plan for that? Maintenance costs. As our fleets age, maintenance becomes more expensive. And, of course, wages. We're seeing a lot of legislation everywhere about kind of equalizing and making wages, more equitable across the board. Well, how do you normalize that once again? How do you understand how to deal with fluctuating wages? It's also, without a route plan, kind of hard to understand what happened today or why did this happen today. It's very important to give drivers a plan so that they have some level of accountability out in the field. Distribution is probably one of the only places where we give somebody an $80,000 asset full of $50,000 worth of product. We hand them the keys. We say, have a nice day. Please be nice to my customers. And, would you please bring the truck back at the end of the day, too? We have to give them a plan so we can understand what they did and what happened throughout the day. And lastly, routing is important just because there's so much data that you have to consider in creating routes. Like I said, Joe, the router who's got all that tribal knowledge, we need to take that tribal knowledge and move it out of his head and into a centralized system so we can understand these things. So what creates a good route? Well, number one, it's about optimally assigning your orders based upon different business constraints. How much can a vehicle hold? What type of truck has to go there? What type of time window do they have? How important is that customer? Are they a gold customer or a bronze customer? We also want to make sure our vehicles are capacitized appropriately. I would dare to say that a 65%, cubing out at 65% is not acceptable in many industries. We want to get it closer to 80, 85, 90%. Drivers are another issue. Good route balances the workload and driver time across all the different routes. We want to make sure that nobody feels like they have a 15-hour route and somebody else has an 8-hour route. We want to make sure everybody has 8.5, 9, 10-hour routes, whatever it might be, and balance that workload. And last but not least, good routes meet customer service and cost goals. You can have customer service at a low cost. It's not impossible. I always see that, the triads where people say you can't have all three, you can only pick two. I think when you have a good route plan, you can pick all three. You can save time. You can increase your customer service, and you can have much more high-quality routes or high-quality work environments. So let's go ahead and take another poll as we move into the second key piece of gathering information for KPIs. What do you think that GPS tools actually help you accomplish? Is it just GPS tracking on the drivers? Is it to help you proactively find out about those service failures? Or lastly, is it to really proactively let your customers know when the driver is going to be there, or maybe even answer that, where's my truck or where's my order phone call? We'll just pause for a second here and let these answers come in. So let's find out what everybody thinks the critical piece of a dispatching tool is. Well, first and foremost, it's GPS on the drivers. And then we're service failures, and then So I'm a little surprised to only see that 9% is letting customers know when your driver's going to be there. We talked about having a plan. The second part to getting a good KPI is clearly GPS. Dispatching and route execution tools tell you exactly what happened throughout the day. So when you execute the plan with a dispatching tool, you can first and foremost manage by exception. Who's not meeting the delivery commitments that day? Who do I need to talk to right away? It also could be looking at who's speeding, who's off the route path, who went out to lunch and got a $25 piece of pizza because they went 10 miles off the route and 10 miles back. Tracking your vehicles. Driver efficiency and accountability. As I said earlier, you could have 5 stops that only take 6 hours, but if a driver gets paid for 8, they're going to take 8 hours. We want to make drivers efficient. We want to make them accountable. Why do we want to do that? We want to do it so we can improve the efficiency and productivity of our business and potentially get 1 or 2 extra stops per route out there throughout the day. Overall, what that's going to do is allow us to park trucks, become more cost efficient from that perspective, but also lower our overall total cost per stop ratio. In customer service, dispatching helps us anticipate what's going to go on. This is a key part of KPIs, the whole realm of customer service. Why? We find that our customers ask us all the time, hey, how do I create a scorecard that shows how many times I've delivered to a particular customer of mine? How many times was I early? How many times was I late? How many times was I on time? They just called me and said, your drivers are terrible because they're always late. Well, there's KPIs and statistics out there that will actually show you the service levels that you've committed to and the service levels you've attained. And, of course, comparing actual versus plan. Having a plan, knowing how the plan was executed, but then doing the due diligence to understand actual versus plan is very, very, very important. So execution equals efficiency. It makes you be efficient. You're setting a plan and an expectation for the driver, what they're going to do throughout the day. They're going to track and monitor that entire driver's day in real time or near real time. When customers call in and say, hey, where's my order, where's my truck? I've seen customers spend 15 or 20 minutes making phone calls to try to figure out where is that driver. Now you'll know in real time where that driver is. You can monitor any exceptions that happen. Is there a bad accident? So now everybody's going to be late. Is there traffic on the beltway and that's going to impact your routes? Maybe have a service failure. You can react proactively to it, but also be flexible and make changes to your plan. Maybe you need to add a stop. Dispatching tools are critically important. I added one slide here just so people realize that dispatching tools come in a lot of different flavors and a lot of different methodologies to actually feed real-time information in. You can use mobile devices like tablets and phones to get information. You can use a black box, a telematics device that will actually feed GPS information into your dispatcher who's sitting in the back end kind of monitoring to see what's happening throughout the day. I think a lot of people think that it's one system or another, but it's really important to note there's many, many different ways to collect actual information throughout the day. So why is actual versus planned important? I look at all these Pinterest photos and I say, you know what, I'm going to plan to make these rainbow pancakes. These rainbow pancakes look awesome. And my niece and nephew, when they come over to Auntie's house, would love to have rainbow pancakes. So I go ahead and I make my pancakes, and man, I nailed it. And you can see that what really happened versus what I planned to do was entirely different with my rainbow pancakes. That often happens with routes too. We can create a perfect plan, but if we don't monitor the execution and figure out what's happening with the execution of that plan, we don't know what kind of went wrong, or maybe something didn't go wrong. Maybe we have customers that detain us and create excess wait times. Maybe it was a bad plan because we overplanned service time, but it allows us to go in and do some analysis. So how about another quick poll here? Just quick yes or no. Do you actually track and analyze actual versus planned? Or are you going to post your rainbow pancakes picture to Pinterest this weekend? So let's go ahead and look at those quick poll results because I know everybody's clicking fast. So great, about 60% of you guys do actually track plan versus actual. That is fantastic. And the reason being is that you know exactly what's going on with your business. So when we talk about kind of those KPIs, that's going to help you out a lot. For those of you that don't track actual versus planned, hopefully we'll show you that there's a lot of KPIs that you should be looking at out there that will help you transform your business. So a couple more quick notes on actual versus planned. For those of you that don't do this, it's about what do we think happened versus what really did happen throughout the day. A lot of times we think the drivers are doing the right things and keeping our businesses top of mind. We don't think that when they go a little bit off route, how expensive it is. We think, it's kind of, that pizza place is kind of on the way. It's really no problem with there. But we don't understand what does it cost us when we're a little late to a customer. Do they maybe refuse a load from us? There's a huge cost and expense of bringing that back into the warehouse. But also, what customers make us wait? Maybe, Joe doesn't show up with the check and we got to wait 25 minutes every time. How do we change doing that? And of course, which drivers cost us money by not actually following the plan? We see a lot of drivers out there that say, thank you very much for the route, but I'm still going to drive the way I want to drive and run it in the order that I want to run it as well. So the last piece is business intelligence. Business intelligence is the bridge that takes spreadsheets and moves it into something that is relevant information that can be easily digested by any constituency or any group within your organization. Personally, I am not a spreadsheet person. Give me a pie chart or a bar chart or a line graph or a bubble chart, and I can instantly understand the information that's been presented to me in 10 seconds or less. When I get a spreadsheet, I have to comb through it and really try to figure out what is important here. Unless it's a P&L statement, because that one's pretty easy. You go to the bottom. But, how do I really understand what's important to my business? Plus, sometimes it's really difficult to get the time and attention to the people that run the really big business reporting tools in your company. So look for business intelligence tools that are specific to what you do. I say business intelligence tools are kind of like this lady on the beach. She's got a great tool to find hidden treasures. That's exactly what business intelligence does, is it finds the hidden treasures in your business. They should be super easy. They should be dashboards that set up in minutes. You should be able to see all of your different business units, regions, whatever it might be, in a single spot so you can rank and rate and compare them. You should just be able to look at exceptions, kind of rule out the anomalies, but also really understand kind of where your outliers are. These are the real basics of exception management. So let's go ahead now and jump over to the meat of this and talk about the KPIs. KPIs come, when I think about transportation, in 5 distinct key areas: safety, efficiency, productivity, customer service, and financial. So let's talk a little bit about these real quick. Safety. Safety is important because we want to make sure that every single one of our drivers comes home every day. But it's also linked to productivity because if I'm using unsafe driving practices, harsh braking, harsh acceleration, harsh curves, taking curves too fast, that increases the wear and tear on my vehicle so they become less productive. Every single one of these blocks is completely and totally intertwined with each other. We take so much time thinking about the safety guy in the organization, the transportation guy in the organization, the driver supervisor in the organization. And they tend to get a little siloed sometimes, but the reality is that all these things are keys and intertwined. So in safety, we're really looking about how does somebody drive the vehicle? What unsafe actions are they taking that could A, tarnish our brand, B, cause an accident, and C, because of an accident, have a huge financial impact to my business. And typically, these are going to be collected by a telematics box, something that you're plugging into the ECM or the ODB2 port. Efficiency is about things like idling. How many miles are you off your plan? How many miles per stop What's your average number of miles per stop? What are the number of off-day deliveries that you're having? How many people are asking you for favors? And of course, vehicle capacity. In the productivity bucket, some key things to look at are quantity per service hour, quantity per total runtime hour. How many stops per route are you doing on average? How many routes per day do you have? How many miles or kilometers are you running? We want to understand these at a very high level on an organization first, and then when we start to see that, hey, my stops per route have really fallen, I can drill down into that KPI and find out why. If I see that miles have started to really increase, overall as a company, again, why? A short story, we had a customer who couldn't figure out why transportation costs had increased by 20%. And as he built a story in our business analytics tool and drilled down, it turned out because they had shut down a major portion of the highway for 3 months, the extra mileage was costing his business about 20%. But, again, good KPIs to look at. So 2 other boxes here, customer service. Plan versus actual service time. You can spend too much or too little time at a customer. If I don't spend enough, maybe the product hasn't been put away correctly, maybe it hasn't been merchandised. If I spend too much time there, hey, maybe it's just Cindy the driver's favorite stop, and I'd like to have a conversation with the people on the loading dock there. And by having that 25-minute conversation, I'm taking away from my employer my ability to be more efficient. Looking at over and short and damaged information, being able to automatically kind of send that information back is a great piece of the dispatching, but by sending it back right away, I can look at those KPIs right away to understand what's coming back or what's come back over time. What's come back over time? Is it the same product? Is it the same driver? Is it the same vehicle? You can start to figure out and uncover where are the problems in your organization. And, of course, the financial side. What is your total overall transportation cost? Cost per stop, cost per mile or kilometer, cost per quantity delivered. These are all things that you should be monitoring in real time to understand, are your averages increasing or decreasing? And if your cost per anything is increasing, that shows you that you have a problem and you need to figure out why. What's the root cause of that increase in your costs? All right, so another quick poll here. Of these 5 KPIs, which are the ones that you most commonly track? The safety category, financial, productivity, customer service, or efficiency. So that's great. Financial is the top one here. I'm glad to see that because I see a lot of times where people aren't kind of paying attention to a lot of the different spots that they should be tracking throughout the day. So how do you figure out what metrics do I use? There is no golden answer here. We could spend 2.5 hours on the phone talking about all kinds of different KPIs, but I think that first and foremost, you have to define what are your goals for transportation. I think everyone has financial cost goals, so write them out, understand them, make them clear, concise, so that everybody can understand them. Second, really think about what problems do I have in my organization today, and which ones do I want to solve? Some problems are always going to be there. Customers that want things at the last minute, we're never going to solve that problem. But we probably can solve the problem of understanding which sales reps allow many off-day deliveries. Off-day deliveries are expensive and time-consuming. We probably can solve the problem of why my average cost per stop goes up in November and December. We can start to understand some of these things. You also need to understand what type of information are customers requiring of you. More and more customers are actually asking for information about the deliveries over time. Why? Well, they're trying to justify why they're using you. Or perhaps they've been approached by somebody else internally to say, should we continue to get XYZ product from ABC company? It's very important to be able to not only have this information, but be able to proactively provide it to them to show them that you're an exceptional service provider. And I talked about this a little bit before, but the last thing here about the metrics, and this is so important, is that each of these categories are completely interconnected. Safety is hugely connected with cost on the financial side of your business. Efficiency, idling has huge ramifications on fuel usage, engine maintenance. It's not just about fuel alone. That has a financial impact too, but it also impacts the efficiency of your vehicles over time. Each of these categories should all be thought about and used together as opposed to being separate. But it's very clear to me that you have to have, number one, those transportation goals and define the problems that you truly, truly want to solve in your business. I always tell people knowledge is power. And being able to have actually the business analytics, the KPIs, and use those business analytics tools to show what's happened in your business is very important. KPIs also uncover how somebody may or may not be using the software tools that you've given them. It's not uncommon for us to work with folks and implement different business intelligence tools to get to the KPIs where we start to understand that only 60% of drivers log into their mobile application every day to collect the actual information. It's not surprising for us to see that they try to hide and log in late to catch up on routes. These are all things that when you use analytics tools and you look at the KPIs to identify the trends, become very, very apparent. The other thing that kind of my word of caution is you can't measure everything. And that's why, you have to decide exactly what you want to measure and what you want to manage. Because if you're not measuring it, you can't manage it. So just wrapping up real quick, I hope you understand that to get to KPIs, you have to have a couple of things in place. Number one, you have to have a great plan. Number two, you have to be able to monitor how that plan plays out in real time. Three, you have to analyze those two components of data against each other. And fourth, you have to use business analytics tools to measure KPIs. Business analytics tools take so much of the heavy lifting, creating spreadsheets, massaging spreadsheets, and doing all that to find and understand it. So I think right now we'll go ahead and I'm going to turn it back to Terry, who's going to help me get through some of the Q&A here.
Great. Thanks, Cindy. At this time, we will take your questions. If you have any, please enter them in the Q&A box found on the left-hand side of your screen. I will go ahead and get started with some of the ones that we've had come in. You mentioned that you can't measure everything. If you can only measure 3 KPIs, which should those be?
So I always look at the cost per stop because, number one, we don't want to get into a situation where our cost per stop for a delivery or a pickup starts to climb, or we have anomalies. I was working with a friend in the Baltimore area, and he had done 2 pickups, so 2 returns of product, and it cost him $300, over $300 actually, to pick something up, where his average delivery cost was in the $27 per stop. And he was picking up $25 worth of product. It would have been much more economical for him to say to the company, hey, I appreciate you don't want it, keep it. So we have to understand kind of the cost per stop. So that's probably first and foremost, number one. Number two, I want to know actual versus planned relative to service time. Why? Because I want to know where I'm spending too much time at a stop, but I also want to know where I've not spent enough time. And then third, I want to know when maybe I've planned incorrectly for that stop. So maybe I only, planned a 15 minutes worth of service time, but what I don't realize is that to deliver the product, I have to get up or down 2 flights of stairs, so I really need about 27 minutes to deliver that stop. I can feed that real-time information back into the routing system and make it much, much more efficient. So let's see, I said cost per stop, I said service time, and then I'm going to kind of say a grouping of a couple of KPIs, which is really about driver performance. I truly believe that we don't monitor driver performance well enough. We don't reward good drivers well enough. Instead, we use them as the go-to guys for everything. So if you create a driver performance program where we monitor, out-of-route miles, actual versus planned, meeting service windows, so kind of the group there, we can create incredibly more efficient drivers that do more stops for you, so your overall costs decrease, and they actually become happier because they might be in a bonus pool, they might have more distributed workloads and things like that. And plus, we're all naturally a little competitive, so when we tack up a report in the break room with all their key KPIs on it, we tend to move around a little bit.
So the next question I have here, what are some of the more common user-friendly BA tools or business analytics tools that you see customers using?
Well, of course, customers are a good old favorite. I think everyone's most comfortable with Excel. I like Excel too, but it's limiting because I have to do a lot of work to get everything into Excel. We're starting to see a lot of customers now with a huge uptick in our own analytics tool called Insight. And the simple reason is that, number one, they don't have to call anyone in IT. It's completely hosted. It grabs the information from your databases overnight. Number two, they don't have to call the person who's in charge of creating custom reports or dashboards with those analytics tools to get it back into the system. So I see Insight, which is completely domain-specific information, so it's all transportation information, being used the most right now. Other than that, I'd say there's a pretty big jump. Some people are using Domo, great tool, easy to use, and then there's a huge jump to something like Cognos. If you're familiar with web services and you can pull the data out of our database, there's a lot of other tools that you can use out there. The challenge is you're always starting from scratch rather than having some transportation templates to start from.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have, we operate with a great deal of same-day deliveries, causing significant problems when comparing actual versus plan. Do you have any suggestions?
No, that is tough. What we try to do is actually create actual versus planned in a lot of different states. So there is the planned when I create routes the day before. There's the planned when I dispatch the routes. So that to me is kind of like the real plan. Since we've had people that have called in and we've entered them in on Monday morning, Tuesday morning, whatever it might be, and then people go out and run that route. And then there's the real execution of that plan. What really happened against what we had planned for. We've even recently talked about kind of having a third state, which is kind of interesting, which is, hey, I did insert things in real time. That became my kind of last state plan. And how do I compare the actuals of what really happened there too? So we think we've been ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff, but what we want to do is be even further ahead of the curve and think about the different route states that can be out there.
Great, thanks. I think we have time for just maybe a couple more. If I have nothing, where do I start?
So I always say you want to start with a plan. If you have no information whatsoever, you have to create a plan so that you at least set expectations. It's very easy to set an expectation and then add on to that execution information, start to do your comparison, and then start to do your KPIs. But to start with your KPIs, the key thing to start with is what standards are you being held to as a department today, number one, and then number two, what are the problems you want to solve? What is your Achilles heel today that you could change, that if you could change, it would change the whole piece of your business?
Okay, and the last question we have, does RoadNet work or have a pickup application rather than a delivery application?
And the answer is absolutely. So we allow you several different, I'm going to say, starting quantity theories. Full, as needed, empty. Why? If you think about somebody that has a homogeneous product like liquid propane, you're going to fill the entire tank because I don't know the order quantities very specifically. It's typically a range. If I'm a food service company, I'm going to just fill it as needed because I'm going to pick all those orders. I'm going to pick the order overnight, load that truck up. And then when I have pickup companies such as, grease, food waste, recycling, trash, I'm going to start empty. And I would say, too, that there's a whole set of algorithms behind each one of those that really tailors the routing based upon the business process flow that has to be followed, too. And I'll just use trash as an example. If I pick up wet trash in a big roll-off situation, I can't pick up dry trash after that because it creates a mess in that same bin. So, it's kind of, you have to think through some of these different processes. It's very important for us to do that. One of the things our product does in a pickup scenario, though, is also allows you to use a mobile device with it to say, hey, I have now picked up, 1,000 pounds of trash. That means that my vehicle now can only hold another 7,000 or whatever it might be. So you can actually keep track in real time how much more I can pick up. So it does work out very, very well. Kind of interestingly, the worst pickup application sometimes is armored cars because money is really heavy. So they wait out before they cube out anytime.
Well, great. Thanks, Cindy, for your presentation today, and thanks, everyone, for joining. If we did not get to your question, we will follow up separately. And again, the recording will be available in the next few days and will be sent out to you. Thank you, and have a good day.